I think we're live.
Hey, what's up, internet?
What's up,
Good to see
TV
you.
land? How's it going? Let me take this beanie off. Um, how's it going, everybody? We wanted to do a quick little follow up after yesterday.
Aftercare, that's important. That's a big thing. Do a little check in, make
Well,
sure
that's kind of an
we're still
inside
on the
joke.
same page. Oh yeah, it is. I can't make inside jokes in public because people don't get them.
Fuck people, man. People who don't
Yeah.
get it. I'm just kidding. All right. No, actually, I would like to start this off by saying hello to people who've never seen us just do a Dave and Nance stream before. These have been a thing now. One of my favorite parts of this channel for the last year. The two of us have covered thousands of hours of stuff together, reading and streaming. And maybe that's an exaggeration. Definitely at this point, more hours together doing that kind of stuff than almost any humans on the internet, but definitely in the world of
Yeah.
theory. And so I noticed that other people are starting to read more on streams, and I think that that's great. And I'm glad that they're
Mhm.
getting the memo that that there is an actual demand for it. I don't think that we created the demand for it. I think we knew the demand existed because as workers with earbuds, we wanted it. And so we had to go and start doing it ourselves. And because we've been doing it for quite a long time, yeah, people are realizing there is a demand for this. And so that means we can do that without the algorithm completely neglecting us. And especially because like I was fine with this channel never going bigger than 5 grand, and look at us now. And so that's not for any other reason than the M stews. But of course we before doing those and between the M stews that we have done, there have been a lot of long reading streams. We read the entirety of Farewell to the Working Class on stream. That's an example. But we've also done a lot of these readings that weren't live, and then we realized that if we don't do it live, we'll never post it after the fact. Virilio never got posted. McLuhan
Yeah.
never got posted. The OTM deep dive never got posted. And I'm always like, oh, I should post that. But then I'm also like, oh, I've got 100 other things to post. And then I'm always like, oh, where are all the things? And I'm across 6 different drives now, and it's just like
Yeah, dude.
organizational nightmare. But the nice thing about streaming is once it's out here, and we good. And so, welcome everybody. And I think that there will be some people who are new from yesterday's M Stew, but this stream is a little less for you than it is for some of the people in our IRL organizing lives. And there's something really important that we are preparing ourselves to do that no one's ever done, of course, coming up as a part of the self-legitimating Johnson series that I'm doing with Nance. We talked about it on the B side, which is still not live. You don't have access to it yet, everybody over here on TV land, but you will soon. You will soon. In fact, I'm going to actually have this stream redirect into that premiere. And so we'll actually
You
kick
have
off
you
that
have it
premiere.
ready to go?
Yeah, it's ready
I
to go.
forgot
And so
I was gonna do that this week. I totally
don't worry
spaced.
about it. Don't worry about it. No, it'll just be on this channel now, which is good. I think it gives people a basis.
Better. More people will see it.
I only regret like saying a couple things that I probably wouldn't have said publicly. Like I hate Thought Slime and like and Noah Samson. I said I hate them, and then I walked it back and said I don't really hate them. But I think that at a very petty, egoic level, like yeah, no, I just want a street fight with these boys, and it's like because I think that they're so bad for the things that they advocate, and that they actually
Mm.
make me want to not associate with the things that they advocate, because it's not like, oh, because I'm like a try guy. It's like I love try guys. There's nothing wrong with being one. Like if you're trying to your whole life fit, demonstrate for everybody that you fit into a nice little cookie cutter shape of harmless male, and you're putting on performances of it, and then downplaying and dismissing the things that make it difficult for most people to fit into those cookie cutters. Look, guy, it would be all right if it was just you doing that for you, but when you start acting prescriptively like that's
You
the way
start
that
demonstrating that. Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
has to be that way,
Yep.
it gets oppressive, and it cultivates a certain kind of teenage 35-year-old
Mm.
audience, right?
Yeah, man.
So yeah, no, but look, no hate, no hate. You do you, honey poo. But yeah, we'll redirect this stream into that, and so people who are listening to this as a standalone episode, don't worry about it. But basically, you could find that whole series we're doing, the self-legitimating Johnsons, on the Theory Underground channel. It's a featured playlist. now, as well as Why Left, which is another podcast that I'm doing. But that one is with Benjamin Studebaker. But okay. This is for people who are coming from two things. One, I'm going to send this to the DJs of last night's event that I went to, people who were a part of yesterday's MSTU, which stands for Epic Marathon stream at Theory Underground. You will all know already about it because I was talking about it at the end of the stream. But I'll talk about that in a second. We'll talk about what prophists are and why it's laughable that we've got all these little hipster wannabe intellectual prophets on the internet predicting the IRL organizing renaissance. And we'll explain why that's laughable. But at the same time, they're right. And it's just, there's being right, and then there's acting like that was your original insight and it says
Some
something about
unique
you.
insight. Yeah.
Which is like a theme.
Yeah, it's cachet, it's social capital, but also like it's not that difficult. Pattern recognition is kind of like the baseline human skill. Like so so to be good at it, it's like that's like step one. So good job. Like you have demonstrated that you are a human. Welcome to the party. We've been here the whole time. like
our friend from Substack, who's so proud of himself for calling podcast the next big thing, and then everybody thought he was crazy, but look, he was right, so people should start to listen to him. And then our point about that, if you listen to the Self-Legitimating Johnson series, is no hate on that dude. What he's doing is just the most obvious version of something that most intellectuals are always doing, which is legitimating their research to people who don't take their research seriously, and they legitimate it by trying to act like they are prophets. And the fact is that would be that, that's potentially cool, but not when you're doing it like a sophist. And so prophist is the term what is it? PHISTS. Yeah. Prophists. So prophists are sophists who legitimate their work through prophecy,
Prophecy.
And yeah. And that's, of course, only intensified, accelerated, etc., in a world where every field and every activity has to be legitimated to people who are rich or speculating on financial markets, speculating on futures. So obviously, that's intensifying something that's an age-old tendency. It's just like it used to be dressed up in more layers, and so for someone to go mask off and say, "You all should listen to me. I get things right all the time." Case in point, I called it. Podcast would be a big deal. It's like, bro, thank you for just taking the mask off and kind of just saying it in the most simple terms imaginable. Most of the intellectuals, they dress it up on a bunch of stuff. And here's the thing: like this is the tie-in to last night's event, and then I'll switch it over to welcoming the other people I'm going to send this to, which is the people from the event I just got out of, the Early Risers Intellectual Discussions meetup group here in Boise, Idaho. I started it recently. The first meeting was this morning. It was a great thing. But basically what I want to say is that there is a renaissance in IRL, which is to say in real life organizing. And of course, the internet is real life, but in internet lingo, you just have to take it loosely. IRL is just a way of trying to say out there
meat
where
space.
you in the meat space, which is to say biological meat-bodied organisms, and ones that you encounter not because of the algorithm helping you find people with common interests. No, it's just people. It's just people. Now, of course,
you
the
run
people
into on the street, and people you see at the bank and the DMV, and coworkers, friends from high school, incidental meetings, those things that do happen less and less often today in the internet world. But I think they can be harnessed. I think they can be harnessed for amazing experiences that you shouldn't take for granted.
The only problem with this term, IRL organizing, like I said, it's a loose term, but if we were to take it too seriously, it falls apart immediately because the two events I'm about to talk about only came about thanks to the internet. And so, that is kind of the thing. All future organizing is probably going to be like this or more like this, right? Which is to say, yeah, we're back in the real world, but it would have not been possible without internet or algorithmic organizing. Yeah, what?
The distinction isn't a clear one. Like I do think people have this like fetishized separation between online and IRL, and it's just not the case anymore. I think even going back to like the 1990s, we were seeing, I mean, with music scenes, like one thing that was huge in the kind of hardcore, post-hardcore scene was MySpace music, late 90s, early 2000s. And even before that, like people would use bulletin board services and shit. Like people already were using the internet when it was nascent, when it was brand new, to do weird types of organizing. So to think that there is a concrete or a definite or a distinct difference between IRL and online, you're wrong, because there are things that happen in the meat space in IRL that were kind of instantiated and motivated and precipitated from something that happened online, and vice versa as well. And like the lines are blurry. We're living in cyber history, right? Like that's a huge part of what we talk about. History did end in 1992, and we're living in something new. So you can't have definite lines drawn between IRL and meat space, but you can be like behind the eight ball, and you can be like just letting all this shit happen to you, or you can develop an awareness of what's going on and try to be a little bit more deliberate, and use it to your advantage.
Jacob says, not convinced I'm human yet. And I just want to say, Jacob, me too. Me too. And of course, that's an ambiguous response on my part, because it might be saying I feel the same way about myself, but it also might mean I'm just saying that about you, Jacob. I'll leave that ambiguous for the time being, just to be fun and coy. But Aaron, Bob, Philo Wanderer, The Dangerous Maybe, aka Michael Downs, Caravaggio, a new regular, as well as several other people who haven't smashed the like button yet are currently with us. Your guys' job in the live chat is to help make this production worth listening to later for people who weren't here yet and who are listening to it as a standalone episode. That's your only job. And if you hinder the process at all, you will be removed from the process. This is not a democracy. It's not a public sphere. And this is not a space to get brainy on us. And it's definitely not a place where you can sit here and nitpick us and act like you are on the level of having spent 30,000 hours doing something that you've whatever. I'm just saying. After yesterday, I feel like such statements maybe are necessary. But I want to bring it back to the early risers' intellectual discussions in a second, which I'll go ahead and just give you all a glimpse of right here on the screen. Let's. Can you actually see that, folks? I don't think you can see that at all. Let me move things around so that you can see it. Let's move Nance over here. For people who don't have eyes on screen, I'm just showing a browser, and it's meetup.com, Early Risers Intellectual Discussions, Boise, Idaho. It's just a made-up name with a little graphic design of my favorite breakfast diner, Americana spot in Boise, over like the cityscape, but also with the treescape in the foreground, which is Dave Wave. That's my aesthetic. And I just wanted to show you all that this is a meetup group that I created cheaply, quickly, threw together, but not without lots of forethought, trial and error. I have 12 years of organizing that went into this idea. There's a lot of stuff I want to do in the IRL sort of world in the meat space. But then I don't do because of previous things I've done, and I'm like, I kind of know how that would go. But then this is something where I was like, yeah, I kind of think I know how this would go, and it's going to be fucking awesome. And I just got out of this meeting. It was the first one. It was awesome. And so I'll talk about what made it awesome and why the kinds of events I organize are special and produce more quality connections than most other organizing spaces. And, you know, what works for me and specifically the other people in these things, like specifically the quality connections being formed between other people, right? Like lots of best friends and marriages come out of the things that I organized over the last 12 years. But also, you know, in some of the worst examples of my organizing, alcoholic jackoff 1 befriended alcoholic jackoff 2, and then they spiraled into destruction. And so there's all kinds of contexts in which, if certain priors are not in place, certain principles are not tended to, organizing can lead to big waste of time at the bare minimum, if not a nightmare. And so humans are not created equal, and they definitely aren't equal today. There's absolutely nothing remotely equal about anybody, except for the fact that we're all so different. That's kind of what makes us equal. We could talk about basic needs, and we could even get into spiritual needs, and maybe those are the things that we are equal. We're equal before the idea of beauty, or truth, or justice, or God, or some bullshit. You know, here's the thing. There's room for that. But what I'm trying to say with this, people are not equal. I'm leading with something sensational just to say that the way that you organize a thing and the principles that you put up front will select for certain types of people over other types of people. And if you don't want to weed out the most quality kinds of people or potential connections from the process, then there have to be certain principles in place. And so that's why I wanted to lead this thing off with talking about the prophists and then turning it into IRL organizing renaissance. And the fact is the IRL organizing renaissance was obvious to everybody who experienced COVID, and everybody called it. Like literally everybody in my life was like, there's going to be an explosion of people wanting to do things. And now we've got hipsters being like, I call it. People are over the internet and want to do IRL stuff. And it's like, oh, wow, you're so deep. Tell me more about the future, Sage. Yeah. And I'm just tired of the blogosphere, podcastosphere, hipster, millennial, trying to make a name for themselves, trying to act like basic things that regular Joe or Jill down at the factory knew all along. All right. So with that said, I'll get more into the principles for quality connection selection, filtering for IRL organizing, and why early risers intellectual discussion was a success later. But for right now, I wanted to start with something a little bit more fun, which is just this right here. Emo versus pop punk, baby. And so, look, this is a lot of music, actually, that Nance and I would have turned our noses up back in the day. It's a lot of like Cute Is What We Aim For and Panic at the Disco and Blink-182 are on a spectrum of we turn up our noses to it, or if the vibe is right at the right kind of party and it's kind of like with a proper dose of irony or critical distance, oh yeah, we can get down to this, right? And so, you know, this is like oldies to us, you know, this kind of music.
Dude, it is.
Right? This is our oldies, right?
Yep.
And the scene that came out of the sort of antitrust, it's not laws, but the sort of antitrust development in technology called MySpace that created a proliferation of independent music that created what gets called emo and screamo and crabcore and deathcore and metalcore and pretty much all of the things that come from DIY punk ethos combining with elements of the rock star way of life and or the aggression, the channeled aggression of metal, which is obviously a very masculine thing, but actually, like as they say, the bitches love it. And so of course that's I'm being vulgar. And I apologize, but don't talk like that, people. You're not allowed to. So
Do you have that soundbite? You shouldn't be doing that or whatever.
My
Or your
soundboard's
what did
still
I?
not set up, dude.
Oh,
Once this
damn it.
computer's set up, which one is it? What's the
The
soundbite?
the one from what yesterday when I was like, you're not supposed to be doing that or
Oh,
whatever.
dude, I think I actually have that. Hold on. Can I pull it
Total
up and like
accidental one.
yeah,
Um,
I was just doing a sound check. We'll come back to the topic here in a second, people, but we do this for people with ADHD, not for you. If you have a
I
problem with us doing this, we're not doing it for you. But where do I save stuff to right now? Yeah, sorry, what were you gonna say?
yeah,
Oh, hold on.
I actually. Oh,
Hold on,
you
found it.
shouldn't be doing that, dude. You shouldn't be doing that, dude.
Yeah,
I
there you
like
go.
that because it's like it's funny and it's like, oh, we're enjoying the transgression. Like this is like we're transgressing and we're enjoying it together, but we're also admonishing ourselves because we have an awareness. So like, don't try to out edgy us. Um, we sometimes do say things that might be a little rough or whatever, but that's not the tone we're going. Like we are just trying to be normal and trying to be conversational and trying to talk.
No, it's
There
here's
are
the thing. This is the way we talk. We understand we are broken. We also want
mm,
professional posh people to understand that they are broken. We want to meet in the middle, but not in the middle between these two poles, but in the middle, high and outside of the whole spectrum. We want to do something special. And yeah, the path to that place is paved with petty, vulgar moments of crude jack off habitus still working itself out in our discourse, and us telling people it's okay, but also rise above.
let's let's rein it in. Let's
We're the
let's
we're the
get back
self
on track.
we're the self-hating dirtbags. That's what
That is it.
Cumtown and Chapo doesn't understand. It's like I for
Yeah, they
them
revel in it.
they wear underclass, like how Mormons wear like magic underwear.
Magic
Like it.
underwear.
Yeah, it's like what the Chapo and Cumtown boys say retard, like it's like their like special little ticket into not belonging to the PMC and somehow breaking from its general trajectory of undermining any possibility for any kind of large scale movement towards uh, uh, actual structural change that would bring everybody time energy in this post class fractured mass. But that's a lot of stuff, and people who are like coming to this for the first time, I just realized we really want to keep it not for you internet people. Let's bring it back around.
Mm.
So what do we want to say about emo versus pop punk? All right, so it's just this. Uh, the scene is one that was always torn between ironic sincerity and sincere irony. And the perfect example of that would be the band Attack Attack versus the band Attila. If you want to talk about people who go hard, these two bands go hard. And they both were like at that point in the scene when all of these kids who had been like writing songs about not being able to get dates were all of a sudden just like, oh, we're full grown, let's party. And and they learn to party. Like bands like Upon a Burning Body and Attila and Attack Attack and Asking Alexandria and Bring Me the Horizon were party bands. They were party bands, and they were somewhat formulaic from a certain standpoint. There was a lot of elitist snobbery in the scene, but the people who were the elitist snobs who could get down with it or enjoyed it understood the sincere irony of it. But the thing about sincere irony versus ironic sincerity is that the lines get blurred real quick, and while that can work for a while, it inevitably leads to breakdown. We can talk about how social justice warriorism, aka wokeism, aka children of the PMC, and people influenced by the fallen professionals who are themselves trying to game the symbolic field, are are cashing in on the breakdown of that
Mm.
scene. Right, there's a lot of emo or punk or ex emo or ex punk kinds of people who went into politics, and the thing is they are purely It's pure. Wait, hold on. So I don't get it twisted. Is it pure ironic sincerity or sincere irony? Like think about Thought Slap
They're doing
or
ironic
Noah Samson,
sincerity. They're doing ironic sincerity,
because
where it's
they're
a performative act where you are covering up a disingenuous, where you're covering up, you're lying, and you're lying about the fact that you're lying. Whereas with sincere irony, you're using a lie, a performative lie, to tell a truth.
thank you.
So it's this is actually interesting. I think well, of course it's I think Bloodhound Gang. I love Bloodhound Gang. I think Jimmy Pop is one of the most talented songwriters of of our lifetimes. Like Jimmy Pop can structure a fucking song in such a beautiful way. The lyrics I don't give a shit about. They're all gross, they're all crass. I liked them when I was 16 years old. I have a hard time liking them now, but the songs are beautiful. Like if you listen to certain Bloodhound Gang songs, they're just fucking beautiful. He does sincere irony in a way where he's telling you something about the way he feels, or he's trying to engender a feeling in you with this beautiful music, but the lyrics are about like doggy style sex and masturbation.
Right.
And so, and look, this came out of
Wait,
the
wait, wait,
conversation
wait.
with
Bring it back to Attila and Attack Attack somehow. Yeah.
so Attila and Attack and I Set My Friends on Fire. They're another one of these, I think, great bands that they're technical, they're very proficient at the art form,
Right.
but the content is kind of lacking because they are joking, and it's like we're up here,
No,
we're
no, no,
joking,
no, 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 no. Because I'm setting up a binary between
between Attila and Attack.
so Attack Attack is on the sincere irony side, and
Yes,
Attila
yes.
is
And
on the
Attila's
ironic
on the-
sincerity side. Right.
Because they take themselves too seriously. Bands like Attila, bands like Terror and Hatebreed, and like this, we are serious about this. Take us seriously. We take this seriously. And then there's bands like Attack. I Set My Friends on Fire, LMFAO or whatever, where they're like,
No. Here's the thing. What I was trying to get at is that Attack Attack was devout, religious, and they have the most seriously Christian lyrics. But if you listen to it, it sounds like devil worshiper music is being exaggerated. So like the performative exaggeration of breaking through the noise with some kind of a costly signal in the world of the metal scene, and being like, oh, you know that thing that you're all doing? Let us do it to its max. But then we'll also turn it into a dance party because we don't take it too seriously. But then underlying that level of irony is this. And by the way, when I say irony, I'm talking about Crabcore. It's the most ironic thing. Like, if you don't know, well then just look it up. But it's extremely corny, but also there's a truth in the drive of it, which is just like pure masculine. Ooh.
pure excess.
And like
It's excess.
I'll do it for the kids who know. I'll just go ahead and I'll just be like, it's like they get low, because the whole thing is people talk about go hard and get low. They go hard, get low. They do it. They're just like they get down. They're basically doing the splits like down to the ground. They're so low that but they're going so heavy. Now, all of this was just to say all of this irony is for something that they are sincere about. And then the only reason fuck, what's his name? Is it Jackson? Fuck. What is his name? Bill Murray.
Oh, shit.
Johnny Frank.
Oh, shit.
Okay.
Fuck.
Johnny
Okay,
Frank.
yeah.
The only reason Attack Attack fell apart was because Johnny Frank lost his faith. Right. And so like that's
Like
how you
so
know
many of those bands, Under
That's-
Oath and Census Fail, and
Right. Oh, yeah. People found out there was a couple of them struggling with a coke addiction, even though they were supposed to be this big Christian band. Anyway, all of this to say, you go to the show and there's all these heavy bands and these bands like you were talking about, like Hatebreed, but then all and Terror, but then all of a sudden you have like this like new breed, and then if you look under the hood at the lyrics, it turned out that they were like these super Christian bands, and it's like, what's going on here? This is devil worshiper music, but that has Christian lyrics. And these people were serious, and they were so serious that often, if there was a loss of faith, it broke the band up. Point being, you can only party and max out masculinity, ironically, to get across a sincere message to a certain point, and a certain kind of fandom gets together around it. And we are kind of in a space here where people have been performatively doing the opposite of masculinity, and there is no theory without this sort of
Drive.
try guy, aesthetic.
Yeah.
So there's when something's new, when a new field is opened up, and that field, it wouldn't be opened up if it wasn't magnetized into life by positions in that field that have the potential for serious symbolic capital. There's still a lot of wiggle room for ways of gaming your way into one of those positions before they become rigid, calcified, institutionalized. And so when a scene is new, when a movement is new, there's a lot of different kinds, a lot of diversity in terms of personalities, which is to say, at a deeper level, dispositions. And so dispositions will help a person navigate into different kinds of positions or perform those positions in ways that people are not used to. And so, like we're just saying that the theory scene has like this lack of something that we're able to bring, but it's aesthetic. Yeah, we feel it. We feel like we want to express ourselves, but it is also like something torn between ironic sincerity and sincere irony. Now, I want to pass this over to you, Nance, but I want to sort of put a bow on my main point, which was just to say that last night I went to an IRL meetup, and it was like this emo versus pop punk dance party show. It's hard to describe because in the world of bands that would have played at Warped Tour, and we'll just use that as the general header here, bands that would have played at Warped Tour between the early 2000s and 2012, like that space in time, those kinds of bands. The thing that made the scene so crazy was the dynamic that bands and fandoms and diehard loyalists and music snobs and serious musicians all kind of bring to it. And if people really just want to get together and dance, then you bring in all that seriousness. There's obviously like a conflict, and you have people who like, they're there for the people more than they are for the bands, or they're there for a specific band and they couldn't care less about the people in the other bands. There's a lot of conflicting interests in that space. And so I was primarily interested in last night because of the conversations Nance and I have been having about the kinds of music projects we want to do. But another way of saying that is like, what happens when you take the band out of the equation and you just take elements of all of these so-called formulaic songs and remix them and have fun and just have fun. And that's something that electronic music was able to do very easily. And it's something that the digital music scene was always very good at. It's something that the DIY punk people couldn't figure out within those genres of like metal and rock and roll, but they were able to do it in hip hop, and that's why you had a huge reterritorialization from the hardcore scene into SoundCloud rap, and face tatted white boys and Hispanics took over the hip hop scene from the underground, but they come from the hardcore scene. So that would be Lil Peep. That would be the Buffet Boys. That would be et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We could go down the list, and it culminates in people like City Morgue and Suicide Boys today. But they wouldn't. They couldn't have done that in a band, and they couldn't have done it in a scene that has like this sort of purist snobbery about like oh, that's cool that you could do that in a studio album, but could you do the same thing live?
Yeah.
Which is the
Yeah.
snobbery. That is the snobbery that became like the thing. It's like, oh yeah, they're great in the studio, but can they do a live show? And it's like, well, now we're talking kind of about something different. Like there's great music, and then there's a band that can do a great performance night after night after night after night after night after night after night, doing the exact same thing over and over again. That's not what the underground music scene was ever about, and that's not what these early bands in the scene were doing. And I don't want to sit here and say like the people who were doing it early were like radical, dude. Like Jacob was just saying in the chat, like the bands prior to the 2000s, they were talking about animal liberation and stuff. And it's like, yeah, well, Rise Against and bands like this, like they still kind of keep that anti-flag, like they still kind of like keep that.
Propaganda.
Arguably,
Like
propaganda.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
especially them.
Yeah.
They do, but it's like, no, that was not the focus anymore. And this sort of like
Yeah, yeah.
austere, we're militant radicals, sort of pretense was lost. And that's where the best time in the scene came from, was when people stopped taking themselves too seriously and realized that music is not necessarily the most radical thing in the world. In fact, and I'm gonna drop the bomb here, music's never done anything good for the world. Period. Just stop. It's cope. It's just cope. Now that I'm being sensational, I'm being extreme. I don't stand behind that statement more than I'm. Well, we could get into it, and I could add some nuance to it. But for right now, let's just assume I'm correct. And I don't even assume I'm correct on that, like indefinitely. But just for a moment, let's just assume that, and then move forward. There's something special about people just getting together, not taking themselves too seriously, and having fun. And it's especially true in the world of alternative music. But the people who are most serious about that music, but then also kind of ironic about it, there was eventually a guaranteed split. That split led to a lot of people just exiting versus a lot of people who took the partying part a little too sincerely in their irony into overdosing and dying. Or addictions that they're still dealing with, and I'm a survivor of what of that tendency, as opposed to people who just they never lost the sincere part, and they did lose the ironic part when it came to performing masculinity, and then it turned into the opposite, and it went into wokeism, and so you can almost say that like one of the things that I hate the most about the scene, which was this sort of Puritan, austere, radical militant, oh yeah, we're doing the thing here, like that left music and went to left tube, bread tube,
Oh shit.
and
Yeah.
and it affected woke or Tumblr affected it's which is, by the way, upstream from DEI departments, which is upstream from Obama signing certain things into law in 2016, which is upstream. So the culture does have this effect on people in the institutions who want to get the youth culture on their side.
Like HR manager, like women in their 30s who are like HR department managers were on Tumblr when like Expire and like crazy hardcore, like in the hardcore scene bands were big on Tumblr. And like it's like, whoa, that's weird. I thought Tumblr was about like vampire fan fiction and lesbian fantasies and stuff. But there's also like there is a weird current of this like post-punk, post-hardcore scene in the Tumblr world. And it's very weird. It's also like
No, but it's because they think that these bands were the place where true
they
radicalism
think it was
happening.
radical action. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I went through the same shit. I was a young skinhead in my scene, and we were skinheads against racial prejudice. If you don't know what that's about, read about it on the internet. I knew Brian Martin, one of the co-founders of Sharps. He was my homie. And we were convinced we were doing radical practice, right? And we did all the stuff. And then it was in the mid to late 2000s when my relation to the scene changed. And I started allowing myself to just enjoy, and I started getting more into the scene bands and less into the more radical stuff. And it's fun. Hardcore dancing is so fucking fun. It's
coolest thing that that came out of it. Yeah.
But it's so dumb and goofy and silly. And it like if you can get into a relation with a group of other people and you're like, we're here to have fun. We're not here to take ourselves too seriously. We're not here to necessarily impress each other. We're not here to take the idea of self-expression seriously. We're just here to have fun. We're here to exercise some demon or other. There's a surplus, there's an excess, all bundled up somewhere in our subjectivity, and we're gonna work that shit out. And you could do that in a constructive scene with dancing. You can do it with sport. You can do it with other types of games and stuff like that. But when you then go too far in the other direction and say, no, we have to take this seriously. This matters. This is radical. This is the most important thing in the world. I can't believe you just microaggression me. You did a toxicity. Right. You're a horrible person. You are what's wrong with the world. It's like, well, what are you doing? Like, you're coming into my space where it's safe to do the excess thing. And now you're saying excess is no longer allowed. Where do I take this excess? Because it still exists. The surplus does not become transmuted into the fucking utopian future that you think you're going to bring about with word games. Right. I still have to deal with this problem. Where do I go?
And I could say my entire subjectivity is formed around a kind of limitless expenditure of drive within certain kinds of contained spaces where it's okay to do that. When it became impossible to do that in the music scene anymore, guess where that moved to? It moved to theory, and now we're here. And the thing is like, we like to go hard, and we bring this whole element of stuff to this. People who are in the know get it. People who don't still recognize that there's something special about it. But Jacob in the chat said, I was one of the people that exited. We went on to black metal and ruined that scene with our PC punk shit too. 100%, man. Now I want to close this out in the next 10 minutes because I have to go do some other IRL organizing. And I just wanted to say this real quick. And that is that I have mad respect for this guy right here on the screen. He was the DJ last night. There were two other DJs. I don't know what the gal's name was. She was up there going just as hard as he was. She knew all those song lyrics, and she was just like really getting everyone going. And I love this guy. He kept like coming up to the front of the stage, and he would like, all right, everybody to the front. And then he's like, for one song, for the Cute Is What We Aim For song. And I never even listened to that band back in the day. I didn't like the dude's bangs. But anyway, like he gets up there and he's like, hey, there's a song, but he's like, there's a dance for this song, by the way. You know, there used to be dances before TikTok. Like we had dances, just so you know. And then he's like, check this out. And then he's like, so follow along with me. And then on the chorus, he taught everybody the dance. And then the next time the chorus came, he's like, you all know it, let's go. And everyone did it. And it was killer, dude. It was killer. And I'm about to play a quick little clip for you all before I switch it over and say my last thing about the principles of organizing for the Intellectual Discussions Group, which I hope Nance will also start a local chapter of soon as part of this bigger strategy we're doing with our long-term plan for self-legitimating Johnsons. But let's go ahead and just click play. Turn the music on. Play it back so people who can't see. I'm going to do a pan from the stage to like the crowd. I want people to be able to see what kind of a crowd we had there. And I turned off the noise suppression so that Nance is able to hear this. Here we go. So, you know, that's a pretty good crowd for considering the fact that if in this scene, no one would have ever shown up for this kind of music without actual bands present. There's something very special about that to me. And I wish I could show you when there was probably more like 70 people all close to the front during this one song. Everyone knew the words to. Everyone had their lights on their phone going, waving, and it was I don't know, Death Cab for Cutie or some band like that. But yeah, dude, it was a lot of cute music. But there was a point when he saw like there were like several sort of Hispanic dudes there who got down in the pit. They opened it up. They were moshing around. There was a couple white dudes in there. And then they're all having fun. And a couple of those guys knew how to like hardcore like two-step and throw a couple windmills. And so like there was some recognition there. And but I didn't mosh. I just stood on the edge of the pit and encouraged them and slapped them on the backs when they'd bump into me, which tends to be what I have done after the age of probably 22. I've just become the side of the pit guy, unless it's dancing, where it's like, look, let me shine and do my thing, or I'll just stand here and support you guys bump into each other. But when that happened, he's like, it looks like we got some moshers who turned out here tonight, and they're all like, yeah. And then he's like, how many of you guys remember Crabcore? And then like me and Ann and like a couple other people like dropped down and he did it. And we were all like, yeah. And it was like, it was a special little thing. So then he played a song and I got into it. And I was wearing like nondescript clothes. I wasn't going to go with fucking, scene gear. I went nondescript. I was wearing like an old ratty beat up puffy jacket that was open, and I was wearing a extra large white tee and just regular black pants and those skate shoes you got me, Nance. And so I was just like about as nondescript as you could possibly be at one of these things. And Anne was like asking me about my fashion choice because obviously everyone else there is in black shirts and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, like for me, it's always been like a big flex if you're a true veteran of the scene to show up and just wear anything, anything. If you show up in sweatpants, but then people get the vibe that the scene better than they do.
Sweatpants?
Yeah.
You're going hard in the pit in sweatpants?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Then everybody's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Same with like that's where backpack core came in, I think, was like people, they just look like they just showed up from like something but then they're there with the backpack still on. And it's like, what the hell is going on here? Okay. Well, that's a lot to say about that. I loved it. It was a lot of fun. But guess what? They also do those kinds of things nowadays for people who are Swifties, for people who are into all kinds of pop music, for people who are into all kinds of metal music. This is an emerging thing. And I'm excited that it's an emerging thing because it's one step in the direction Nance and I have been thinking about a lot. Okay, so we don't have time to get into the rest of the stuff I wanted to say about that. I've got the Early Risers Intellectual Discussion Group up here on the screen. And I just want to speed run a couple things about it and then let Nance say a couple closing thoughts. And then we'll be out of here and we'll all be on our way with our days. I just wanted to talk about the responsibility I feel for curating quality connections and how I think about that deeply. And about how in some cases, these people who came through my stuff and got married and settled down and started lives, I go, yeah, it's great that happened. In other cases, like best friends coming out of it, I'm like, that's great. Bert and Frank in Boise, Idaho, going on a weekly walk in a beautiful part of the city. They've been doing that now for like 3 years. That comes out of my organizing. And it's like, these kind of connections are for them. It's not for me. A lot of best friends or collaborations come out of stuff that starts with my organizing, like Vanishing Mediators, Andrew and Nick, but sometimes these things that come out of the stuff that I organize, those things can be destructive or even reflect poorly on the thing that I'm doing for the reason that I'm doing it, right? And so I have to put a lot of thought into like the setup and the things that I like about Early Riser Intellectual Discussions and its framing. I'll be ready in 2 minutes. Is that Anne's all like, "Are you ready to go?" It's simply this. It's a perfect way to do the sober filter, and for me, the sober filter is it's like, okay, if the activity you're doing matters for its own sake, then it should be something that also matters even when you're sober. And if the people that you're establishing quality connections with truly are of quality, then they should be interesting to a person who's sober. Most of the people I know are not interesting unless I've had a few beers. Or to they're not interesting to themselves without a few beers. They're not interesting to their friends without a few beers. they're not interested. Their entire network is mediated by that liquid. And that's fine. It's just a part of like, hey, we're all like being, as balanced as we can between workaholicism and jack off in the rest of the, when you're not working. And I get it. You got to cut loose. You need your pressure release valve, blah, blah, blah. But for those of us who are coming out of this thing and trying to do something over here in the world of intellectual, heady, philosophical, theoretical stuff, I do think that some kind of a sober filter is necessary for the quality connections to form. And, it is what it is. If you love Theory Underground primarily when you have a beer in your hand, no hate, right? But like the person said in chat yesterday, wasn't that? Frog said that he quit drinking so that he could afford
the subscription for fucking Theory Underground.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah, because it's like you've got your budget figured out, but you've got to spend a certain amount of money on alcohol. And it's like, well, you know what? You could be spending that on philosophy instead. You cannot serve two masters. And trying to be a drunk intellectual is not going to work out for you. You cannot be a Charles Bukowski for theory. It's not going to work. It only works for poetry, and it only works for poetry within a specific scene, within a specific historical context. It'll never work again. You can't do that on Instagram. It's not going to work. I see people trying. It's embarrassing. But at least you can have some fun, you think. But the question is does the fun you're having make it through the sober filter? Does it? Well, there's a time of the day when most people are sober. It's 6:30 a.m. And so Early Risers Intellectual Discussions is an IRL group that meets in Boise, Idaho at 6:30 a.m. once per month on the first Saturday of the month. And I've got a bunch of reasons for why I'm doing it. There's a bunch of experiences that I have that went into establishing it. There's a bunch of things that I think it's going to help me do, but it's also going to hopefully just form some quality connections. And I think that doing it at 6:30 a.m., it selects for a certain kind of assassin. We had people there who are working for the world's biggest microchip manufacturer. I think he's in his 30s. We had people who are retired or semi-retired. We had people who are writing their own novels. We had people like Elton LK of the Working Class Intelligentsia podcast, who's got his Dead Parrot Philosophical Society in Nampa, Idaho. That's a monthly meetup group, but it's in the evening. A lot of the people don't pass the sober filter. But that's important because in a certain sense, if you're trying to get through to people, you want to in some cases, the best way to do that is for them to have a couple of drinks in their system. And so I'm not saying that everything I do, I want it to, work in this way, but I have to be able to touch grass with human beings, which, metaphorically means, you got to work with some people who pass the sober test. And then, from there, you can do bigger events that have some alcohol, but at least you've got a crew or a cadre of sort of militant assassin people, straight edge motherfuckers, or people who can at least do the thing and have fun while being clear headed, which are two separate things. Because some people can be like, no, I do this clear headed most of the time. Sometimes I have some drinks. Oh, okay, cool, Mikey. He can do that. I can't. Yeah. So there you go.
I mean, I'll eat
Close it out
from time to
Close
time.
it out. Yeah, same. Close it out. What do you want to say?
No, look, I've also been kind of thinking about how to operationalize the free time that I find myself with, and that's usually in the mornings. I get up early. Usually I'm up around 4 a.m. and I go skateboard. There also does seem to be an outsized contingent of people that I've met via Theory Underground in Arizona. So this could actually be something. There could be a local chapter here in Phoenix as well. And dude, the sober test, it is true that there are a lot of people who can't pass it. And that's important to me as well. I don't know. I'm stoked. This is dope. And I mean, we're coming off yesterday, the 2-year anniversary. Happy birthday, Theory Underground. Also, happy birthday, Dave. So yeah, I don't know, man. Just like a good, chill, relaxing Saturday. Later, we're gonna read some more of Benjamin's book, Chronic Crisis of American Democracy: The Way Is Shut. That's gonna be cool. Those of you who are subscribers and who are tuned into that, we'll be meeting up in a few hours. Like two in a little bit, two and some change at this point. Um, but yeah, I mean, we all find ourselves sometimes with quote unquote free time. And I think a deliberate approach is better to free time than just kind of like a wishy washy, I'm a jack off, I'm going to jack off all day today approach. Um,
Right.
and I mean, yeah, I'm also stoked about all the music shit that we've been talking about. And this is a really interesting addition to that ongoing conversation.
The demand is there. We talking about what we wanted to do, we're talking about what we wish other people were already doing. And then so when I found out about this, I was like, that is kind of like what we're talking about.
I
It's
mean, it frames it in a way.
it's 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 missing, like, okay, DJing that just makes one song go into another song is very different from what Skrillex was doing with stems. I want to do that with metal. And the question is, like, how do you actually do that? It's a lot more complicated. And I think the technology is officially there, but ideally I'll find somebody who's already done similar stuff and I can like learn from that person. I'd like to slipstream somebody instead. Look, Jacob and Drew and everybody else who was a part of this production, we really appreciate all of this quality engagement, but we got to cut it off, and we will not be able to engage with the chat as much as I would have liked to. But that's because this is a short and sweet one. I got to go do jujitsu with my wife. I love you guys. Peace.
Peace, peace, peace.
Let me just click this and click that. And yeah, everybody, I'm not sure if you could become a TU subscriber through the website as of today or not, but hopefully over the weekend it'll be possible and we'll be Gucci. All right, peace.